Okay, we're rolling. So in this video, we're gonna mix dye stock solution. We're gonna mix it to 1%, and I'm gonna walk you through all the things that you might need and some safety things also. So pay attention to the safety procedures especially. Before we get started and get messy at all, we wanna make sure we have everything kind of pulled into one spot. So for safety, I'm gonna wear my respirator mask. So this is just for particles, and it doesn't have to be too fancy. You know, a regular, like a 3M mask for paint would be fine, or really any dust mask would be okay. I have one of these because I do a lot of dye stuff in here. So these are particle masks, and the particle ones are the less expensive ones. We don't need to filter out vapor, because the vapor that comes off of these liquids is not harmful. So I'm gonna need to wear my mask and some gloves because I don't wanna get dye stuff on my hands. And I'm also gonna use a dye hood. A dye hood is, it can be a very simple thing. The one in the studio, I will show you outside of this video. It has two armholes that go into it, so you don't have to wear gloves. And then it also has an electric switch so that it actually vents directly outside the back of it, it's great. But I don't have one of those here at my studio, and you working at home won't have one either. So this is my lovely dye hood that I've made. It's a cardboard box, okay? We're trying to keep the particles out of the air that you're inhaling. So we're containing them in this box. So this is mine. It's basically just a box with a hole in it. And this is a damp paper towel. You'll see why that's important in a bit. For you, I would recommend just find a box and tape one side and then put it down. So maybe if I can't see very well, I could tape these together if I wanted to, or I can just leave it like this and put my wet paper towel on the bottom of here. So mine is a little nicer, so I'm gonna use mine. I've got a light, and I've got some plastic sheeting at the bottom for if I spill, I don't get stuff on my table. So I need dye hood, gloves, and mask. I recommend highly having paper towels handy in case something awry happens. We wanna have our container that we're gonna mix our stock solution in. We wanna have a way of labeling that container with what we're making. So today I'm making 1% of moss green. I want to put today's date on it. And if there's anything else I want to put on here, let's see. Oh, I should put that this is acid dye, because we'll make other kinds of stock solution and then we won't know what it's for. So that's about right. If I was at the studio and I was gonna leave this in the studio fridge, I would also wanna put my name on it and what class I'm in. So add another piece of tape, put your name and your class, hue dyed fiber, winter 2021. So we've got this labeled, we'll do that ahead of time. We're gonna need our scale. We're gonna need our dye powder, sometimes also called dye stuff. We're gonna need a spoon. Which spoon actually doesn't matter. And then we'll need our colander that has the milliliters on it. So you can be fancy and get these that have milliliters on them, so you can kind of, only have one thing, or you could use maybe a ball jar that has the milliliters on it. And this one has just 100 and 200. I don't find that very helpful. So in my case, I don't have running hot water in my space, and also at school there is not running hot water in the dye kitchen. So I'm gonna dissolve this powder, and I need warm water to do it. So I have already boiled some water in my kettle here, and that's the same thing you're gonna do at the studio. These work based off of a thing that they sit on. So mine's over here, very, very technical. And they sit on here, and then you just turn them on, and boiling is 212. That's actually above boiling. I believe boiling for water is 204. So it kind of beeps when it's done. Never ever put these on a stove or a hot plate. Like, they go only on that little thing that comes with them. I have seen people put them on the induction burners before, and don't do that. So if you're at home, you can just use hot water from your sink. So let's begin here. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna turn it on and zero it out just like before. And now, before I get messy, before I open the powder, I'm gonna put my gloves on. Now, I'm gonna make 500 milliliters of this stock solution, and it's 1% stock solution. So let's quickly do that math over here on my scrap paper, but I don't care if it gets wet. I want 500 milliliters. I want 1% of that. I'm gonna move the decimal over twice, or I could just I could divide it by 100 if that makes you feel more comfortable. That will give me 1%. So I need 5 grams of powder. Five grams is 1% of 500 grams, and grams and milliliters work together. So I'm gonna put 5 grams in here. I'm gonna always do powder first, and then we're gonna add the liquid to the powder. This makes less dust. So all these things that we're doing are to make less dye powder dust stuff. Now, that says it's 9 grams, and it's not. There we go. Make sure my scale is zeroed out. And I'm gonna put this in here until my scale reads 5. Work slowly, because it's your scale doesn't measure like in between grams, so that's good. As soon as we can, we'll put the lid back on this nice and tight. And I don't need my scale anymore. And then what I'm gonna do is add a little bit, only a little bit, of the water that I want into this cup. So I'm gonna actually measure mine in here, and I'm gonna use a quick note here about glass and boiling water. If this is hot water from your sink, it's fine. If you're using boiling water, make sure you're pouring it into plastic or into either a Pyrex or an Anchor, really thick tempered glass material. Don't pour boiling water directly into like a reused glass jar, because it might shatter. The temperature shock might shatter the glass. So you have been warned. I know I want 2 of these. I'm just gonna start with 1 that's measured, and I'm gonna add just a little bit. So I've added only a small amount of the water that I want. And I've done that so that I can reach in here with a spoon and smush it all around. Try to break up any of the chunks that are in here. Stir gently so that you don't stir it on yourself. Now I just flicked this all the way up to my shoulder. So I do recommend you wear clothes you aren't a huge fan of. You can also wear an apron. Got it all stuck to my spoon here. So once I've got it all broken up, I can add the rest of my liquid. Got some stuff on the side. Go down there. My spoon is a mess. It's cool. My hand is a mess. I'm just gonna pour with the other hand. I always think, don't worry, it won't get that messy. And then this is how it goes. So that's my 500 milliliters of water. And what I'm gonna do is just leave this and make sure that it's very well dissolved. So I could use this as soon as the stuff is dissolved, or I could store this for a little while. If it's outside of my fridge, probably with acid dye, it should last at least a month, just like this. If you're at school and you're using the refrigerator, honestly, you can leave it in there all semester. So now that I don't have any powder left, I don't need to work in my container anymore. I'm gonna go rinse my hands at the sink so that these gloves can be reused. Now, getting a little bit of dye on your skin it's not gonna kill you. The acid dye powder, it's not acidic. That's not what that's for. So if you do get some on your hands and it's acid dye, don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine. You might dye your hands and the skin will stay dyed until that skin falls off. So that's not so great. Just wash it with soap, or if you have some Gojo or soap that has little crystals in it, what is that called again? Exfoliating soap, to get the skin off, that will work faster. So I've got this, and it's still very hot, so I'm actually gonna let it cool down fully before I put the lid on it. Do not put the lid on it and then shake, it will explode. I did that last week. So you can see here why I have my lovely paper towel down here, so that when I put the spoon down and all that, it kind of absorbs that. And if I have any loose powder that just falls down, the paper towel will really take care of that. So I'm gonna clean this up now. And I didn't get too bad today, so I'm just gonna take these over to the sink and I'll be done. Always use, I've asked you to buy a different color sponge than you already own. Mine I just keep in different places. And then you'll use that sponge only for dye stuff. I want you to buy a special colored sponge or to like mark it in some way. If it looks identical, cut it in half. I don't want your family using it, or your roommates, whoever you live with, on their food after you've used it for dye. So do not mix food stuff and dye stuff. This spoon, always for dye now. This thing, always for dye. These had stock in them, they're always for dye. Are they perfectly clean? It really does look like it, yes. But just in case, no mixing ever.